Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our tips and tricks session. Today, Mike Taylor, our consultant, is going to go over Boyum line loops, and I'll let him explain exactly what they are for those who have Boyum B1UP.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Hello, everybody. I would like to just preface this webinar by saying you would need B1 usability package to use this tutorial. So if you don't have B1UP, get in contact with Tracy. We can show you more. I'm not going to get too technical in this particular webinar, so I want people to kind of see the potential of the line loops. So don't worry, it's not an in-depth tutorial, but just wanted to say that before we get started. Okay, so our agenda for today, we're going to talk about what are line loops, why use them. I'll show you an example, little bit of a tutorial, some B1UP video resources, and then Q&A. So what are line loops? Line loops are a universal function, or just a function in B1UP, where you can loop through a matrix. Commonly you can think of a matrix as, on a sales order, where you have your items. So you have items, quantities. It allows you to read live data within those matrix columns and make changes. So commonly this is very difficult to do if you've tried to do anything with formatted searches, or you've even worked with B1UP and you're trying to say, oh, what's the total of the quantity we have on this? You wouldn't be able to get that information without using something like a line loop. Again, on live data. So this is like as you're adding the document, not once it's in the database. So why use them? I mean, that's the key thing. If you're going to add a document and you need to affect the rows, you can read through the rows, do a summary of the rows, you can read through the rows, edit the rows as you go, and you can fix up rows on a document, whereas without a line loop, they're basically impossible to touch or make any changes to. So if you have a more complicated discount structure, if you need to read something on a particular items and then output, a freight total, you can read through a matrix, and I'll show you what a matrix is specifically, and then you can use that to do calculations. So it basically just loops through your items on a document or any other matrix and allows you to make changes or do summaries. I'm going to pop over to my demo system. So you can see here that we have just a regular document. So you can see that I have 4 items, and this is a matrix here. Oops. So this is a matrix. You can see that normally if you were going to do a summary, you can't do like a formatted search and just say, give me the sum of the quantity. You can't do that. You can't affect anything within this matrix using a regular macro, even with, well, that's not true. With a regular macro, if you know the exact column and row, you can. But say there's 20 rows, or there's 1 row, or there's, you can, it's very difficult to predict the position of a specific item you want to affect. So the loop goes basically through and goes, and each row, it'll allow you to check or do something, either edit the row, change a field in the row, or just summarize a row. So a really simple example here is my loop example number 1. I'm just going to click here. So it looped through each row and counted up the quantity, and then it just output that quantity in a message box. Very, very simple. You can see it looped all the rows. It was very quick, and it went through there and it gave me the total. So if I change this dynamically, 5, and I did the same thing, it tells me that there's 8 total. So this is an extremely simple example, but it shows you how it loops through, does a summary. I didn't actually get it to change anything on the row based on any of the information, just to give me a summary, just to show you guys it's a very simple way of understanding what it does. So what can you do with this type of stuff? I mean, I've seen all sorts of different things. One of the things that comes to mind is eco fees. So you can, have a button that says apply eco fees. It can go through and either on the row apply a freight charge, or it can just go through, summarize everything, and then output an eco fee total at the bottom. You could do warranty charges too, so it would just, you add all your items, loops through, summarizes the values for each of the rows with a warranty, and then it can either output that amount to a header table, or like I'm about to show you, it can also make items as well. So my second example here, I'm going to go through, click it, and I clicked it, but the conditions weren't met for my second loop. So what I said for the second loop is if there are a quantity of at least 20, then the customer will get a special gift. So you could say something like, if the total of the document, if the subtotal of the document is over 1,000, add a gift, or you could do anything you want. You could read a particular additional item that needs to be added for a particular item and add it below. There's tons of different things. So if I bump this up to 20 and I go to push my line loop 2, it read the condition and it said, oh, there's over 20. We'll add a special gift to this. And this can be freight, eco fees, user manuals, country manual.
Mike, just a second.
Yes.
The gift came in automatically because of the quantities, right?
Yeah, exactly. So because the conditions, because the conditions were met, and this can be any condition, the gift appears there. So again, it's kind of just trying to keep it really simple, but you can affect or change anything on the row or just summarize any of the columns. And in this case, I told it to say, if there's over 20 quantity, just keeping it simple with the quantity, it'll add a new row with the gift. So let's take a quick look at the tutorial. I'm going to just show you the forms and how the second example works, similar to the first example. And I'll just kind of give you an overview of some of the functions. So I launched these off of a function button. They can be launched automatically off of a field with a B1 validation. They can be launched the same way any of the universal functions are launched. So it's easy to do it that way. I just like the buttons because I don't like to auto trigger too many line loops, especially if the triggering of the line loop will then trigger another line loop, it can cause slowdown. So usually I like to say just put all your items in and then launch it by a button. So that's why I put it here on the side. I'm going to look at the universal function for that button. What's going on here? And then, so we'll take a look here. So it's looking at, it says line item UID. So this is matrix 38. So if I go view, system information, you can see that you just put the item because it considers this matrix one item. And it says, well, what are we going to loop? Then in this case, you can run a universal function before doing any of the loops. So you could run the universal function on the document before and then apply a line loop to each row. In this case, I didn't actually do any affecting of the rows. I just said collect data. So I just wanted to collect the column 11, which is the quantity, and I just said sum it. Then I said, after it's done all of the looping, execute if condition is met, result as a number greater than or equal to 20, and then I do this universal function will run, and then so if the conditions are met, it will go and it will set the last row with a gift. Okay, so again, extremely simple. You can have multiple conditions here. You can do all sorts of cool stuff. This is just a single simple condition. And you can even do SQL conditions in the row. So you could say, if the item has an eco charge property flagged as yes, then add the eco charge. You can add, all sorts of different actions that can be done on the row. So it goes row 1, do its evaluation, do an action, or summarize. Row 2, do an action, summarize. Row 3, do an action, summarize. And then at the end, run the final result. So you can see it's very, very flexible. And again, it allows you, with the document being live before it's added, or to affect system fields, you can impact the rows. There's no other way to do that. For doing summaries, I mean, just to contrast this, the only way to do it would be to add the document. In this case, I had it already added just for the webinar, but you could potentially add the document and then read out of the database. But again, the loop allows you to read it regardless of whether it's in the database or not. So you can do it dynamically. It makes it much easier for, you know, an order entry person to just be doing their sales order add. They do the sales order add, push the button, calculates all the eco fees, calculates all the freight through the rows if you need it that way, and then boom, 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 it's done, and then they add it. They don't have to add it and go back to it. So that's one of the huge benefits of the line loop. It allows you to affect all the rows. So again, I kept this really simple just to show you the potential, so you can kind of get it in your mind of scenarios that you would want to use with the line loops. There's a lot of resources here from Boyum as well. So you can go and just search B1UP line loop, and you're going to see our friend Rasmus explain this. There's 2 tutorials, part 1, part 2. He'll explain how to use it, you know, a little bit more in depth than what I was doing, or a lot more depth than what I was doing. And the 2 sessions, you can get to know it really well. So it can get a little crazy, but it's very, very useful. Secondly, you have just the B1 usability package line loop help. And this goes through every field. And you can just search for B1 usability package help, online help, and then you can search for the line loops in there. It's very, very easy to find. And this will tell you step by step what each of the fields mean, how to use it basically, and there is no replacement for experimentation. So you can always install the demo of B1UP on your system, or if you already have B1UP, go into your test database, run through some of this and play around with it. That's, you know, honestly how I took the video and I experimented with it, and I used the documentation, and I'm pretty good with them now. Okay, so that is basically it for what I wanted to show today. So
Thanks,
are there
Mike.
any questions or comments? If not,
I don't see any questions.
Perfect. So
well,
right,
thanks, Mike. Thanks, everybody, and have a great weekend.
All right.
All
Thanks.
right, bye.
Bye.